Hello, I'm Georgia.
I'm Charlotte.
Today we're going to teach you about double replacement reactions.
Let's get to the lab.
For these reactions you will need two 200 milliliter beakers with 2 pieces of mesh, 4 grams of cobalt nitrate, 4 grams of cupric sulfate, and a 0.25 molar sodium hydroxide solution. To set up the first reaction, pour 200 milliliters of sodium hydroxide into one beaker. Place the mesh into the beaker with at least 1 inch of the mesh hanging into the solution. Then pour in the cupric sulfate. This reaction will take more time to complete, so we sped up the video. You should see a few larger light blue stalactites forming. The next reaction is very similar. Pour the sodium hydroxide into the beaker, add the mesh, and then add the cobalt nitrate. This reaction will occur very quickly. The stalactites are much smaller and many more are made. You may notice that there are both blue stalactites and pink stalactites.
You may be wondering how these reactions work. Both of them are very similar, and so we will only explain the cupric sulfate reaction. This type of reaction is called a double replacement reaction. Double replacement reactions occur when 2 ionic compounds switch ions to form 2 new ionic compounds. It's like when you're dancing and switch partners with someone else. To start off, we're going to use a simple example with ionic compounds AB and CD. An ionic compound is a combination of 2 or more ions. These compounds have a positive ion, we'll show that as red, and a negative ion, we'll show that as blue. As you can see in this drawing, A and C are both red positive ions, and B and D are both blue negative ions. When the compounds react together in a double replacement reaction, B and D switch places. Now there are 2 new ionic compounds, AD and CB. Each compound still has a positive and a negative part.
The same idea applies to the stalactite reactions you just saw. Let's use the cupric sulfate example. Cupric sulfate is made of 2 different ions, the positive copper ion and the negative sulfate ion. Likewise, sodium hydroxide is made of 2 different ions, the positive sodium atom and the negative hydroxide ion. When the cupric sulfate is added to a solution of sodium hydroxide, the double replacement reaction occurs, forming copper 2 hydroxide and sodium sulfate. The copper 2 hydroxide is the blue solid we saw forming the stalactites. When a solid forms from a reaction in solution, it's called a precipitate. Both stalactites we saw are precipitates.
Explaining the second reaction in depth, we invite you to think about how it may have worked using the concepts you just learned.
We
hope you learned something.
Bye!